The gunshot wounds or the explosion deaths are again very important, and whenever we're talking about the explosion deaths, it's very crucial that the personal identification phenomena is quite crucial, and it is very important because we are just dealing with the fragments of the bodies and not the whole bodies whenever the explosion deaths occur. So it's basically this combustion phenomena that has occurred on a larger scale, and it is very damaging and very fatal. A lot of fatalities occur in such a case, and how to deal with such mass disasters is very crucial. So we'll be discussing all of this in this section over here. Now, talking about the deaths from explosion, basically the nature of the explosive trauma is again very common. So the autopsy signs are again very common over here. And how are we going to document such injuries in cases of such explosive deaths? It's again very common. Now, autopsy in explosion deaths, how it is carried out, what are the autopsy findings, how can we write down or document all of these autopsy findings, that will be discussed over here in this lecture. The explosive trauma, as I've already emphasized on this factor, the main and the most important thing is the personal identification. How basically you'll just lie down how many people died, and out of these people, how many were males, how many were females, how many were the children that basically were involved in such explosive deaths. That is basically the mainstay whenever you're working as a forensic pathologist and you come across such a case of explosion at your hand. Deaths from explosion, basically from the explosive substances. So there are a lot of explosive substances that you come across. It's basically can be a detonation of chemical stores. Ships or factories are also involved in such cases. And so it is very important just to have a look at the chemicals that was involved in the explosion and the types of factories, or it can be schools, buildings, or any rushy area can be involved in such explosive phenomena. The causative factors basically include the blast effects and the impact of the projectiles from the explosive devices. So the explosive devices and the projectile, how it basically impacted the bodies, what was the velocity of the projectile, all of these are basically discussed over here. The impact from the surrounding objects and the debris. So it's again very important that the surrounding objects also come into play. Even if they are not a part of the projectile themselves, they can basically be damaging to the individuals, and they can come into play in such an explosive trauma. The burns from the hot gases such as the carbon monoxide and the incandescent objects can again be a part of this kind of an explosive trauma. Secondary injuries from falling and on the masonry and the beams can also fall, and they can cause the secondary type of injury. So basically when we're talking about the explosions, all of these basically phenomena come into play. Even the stampedes are also a part of these explosive traumas. The autopsy signs on a blast, basically damage at interface between the tissues in contact with the atmosphere, is again very important. The pulmonary damage is again very important over here. The autopsy signs include the subpleural patchy hemorrhages. So on the whole body, there'll be subpleural, not on the whole body, it's basically the lungs. The pleura will have patchy hemorrhages. On the body, of course, we'll find the other signs. And there'll be an intrapulmonary hemorrhage phenomena as well. On the lungs, you can see bullous impressions. So it's basically going to be caused due to the hot gases or the carbon monoxide combustion. The airway obstruction is also going to be seen, and there is going to be hypoxia and primary damage along with the secondary damage due to the falling of the beams or the incandescent gases. All of this basically comes into play whenever we are writing down the autopsy report in such a case. The alveolar walls are again very important over here. There is a free disquamated alveolar or a bronchial epithelium that is seen in such a case of the explosive deaths. There are large areas of hemorrhages. So alongside the pleural surface, there are large areas of hemorrhages. They are seen alongside all of these structures. The nasopharyngeal injuries are again very important over here, and the damage to the tympanic membranes, that is the ears, due to the high speed velocity combustions, they're again very important, and the circumferential bands around the intestines, they're also seen in the autopsies. Gastrointestinal damage is also a part of the explosive deaths. The missile injuries in the explosions are again very important. Now, how do they occur? At autopsy, you will see that there is a pigmented body from the dust blasting. So you'll just observe that there is a dust blasting phenomena, and due to that dust blasting phenomena, there is pigmentation even on the pleura and even on the whole surface of the body. So it's again very important. There is a peppering phenomena due to the, as you see in a shotgun, there are wards, and due to that wards, there is a tattooing or a peppering phenomena. So in the explosions, there are a lot of fragmentary remains, and these fragmentary remains are basically causing this peppering or this tattooing phenomena in such a case. The bruising, lacerations, abrasions, basically all kind of this general trauma structures that we've already discussed, they're going to be seen in this phenomena. The burns, discolor body, that is the flash burns, because high voltage electricity burns can occur in such explosions. The limbs are sometimes blown off, and the abdomen disruption is quite common in cases of such explosive deaths. There are also localized injuries, for example, the localized injuries to the head, to the limbs. All of these basically occur in a lot of cases. So X-rays or the multi-slice CT scans. So basically what we have at our hand, it's just a single bone, or it's just a single fragment of the human body. So how can we identify the personal identity of how can we identify a person if you have found just a fragment of his body in such explosive deaths? We'll just submit that fragment of the body for all of these investigative authorities, that is the X-rays and the CT scans. Of course, the DNA sampling is again very important. We'll send that fragment of the remain to the chemical pathologist for slicing, and just he'll observe that and he'll get the DNA out of it. Even the hairs can be used for the DNA analysis for the personal identification of the person. Even the things that are found at the crime scene, for example, the ID cards, the personal identification cards, or any cards that are found at that place that are going to point out towards the personal identity of the person. So they are very crucial over here. Now, the detection of the lethal missiles are again very important, and they're quite crucial over here. Radiography, as I've already told you, it can be an MRI, a CT scan, or the X-rays are the mainstay over here. We'll basically collect the fragments, all of the fragments, and detailed study of these fragments is again needed to identify the personal identification of the person. The gender determination, so as I've already told you, first of all, the factual figures, how many were males, how many were females, how many were children, how many were adults. All of these factual phenomena are going to be documented in detail while writing down the reports for this explosion deaths, because they're carried out not individually, in a collective manner. These autopsy reports are carried out. So the identification of the recognizable structures and the scalp structures are again very important. The sorting of the limbs and the joints. So you'll just sort down the limb and the joints, and they'll just identify to which person these limbs and the joints belong to. So in this section, basically, we dealt with the explosive deaths in particular. How are these explosive deaths important? And as a forensic pathologist, what are the duties of a medical officer? How is he going to carry out the investigation in such a case? It's all discussed over here. That is the end of this section. Thank you for watching sqadia.com.